else, right? You're looking at social media, you're watching the highlight reels of people's lives, dopamine is flooding your brain, and you want to be like everybody else, and so I have them close their eyes.
Today, a set of so-called leaked HR memos exploded across the internet, instantly going viral and igniting a firestorm of speculation. At the center of the scandal is Blake Lively, who is now being accused of planting or leaking these documents herself. The alleged papers claim to be official Sony HR complaints against Justin Baldoni, painting him as a subject of multiple reports of inappropriate behavior from actresses on set. The timing couldn't be more suspicious. With her reputation crumbling and public sympathy rapidly fading, observers believe this may have been a calculated distraction. One final desperate move to pull the spotlight away from her own mounting controversies. Sony's response, however, has thrown the credibility of these documents into serious doubt. Within hours of the leak, Sony publicly denied that any such HR complaints were ever filed, raising a glaring question. If these accusations were legitimate, why has the company itself directly contradicted them? Even more telling is the fact that none of these supposed complaints appeared in Blake's original lawsuit against Baldoni. Legal analysts have pointed out that if she truly had access to such explosive evidence, it would have been included from the very beginning. Instead, the documents appeared out of nowhere, just days before a final amended complaint was due in court. To critics, the timing looks less like coincidence and more like a deliberate attempt to orchestrate a last-minute twist to sway public opinion. The documents themselves allegedly suggest that several actresses, including Blake Lively and Jenny Slate, had taken their concerns to Sony about Baldoni's on-set behavior. But again, the company has stood firm that no such report exists. This contradiction has only fueled suspicions that the leak was manufactured. Some have even argued that parts of the memo read like recycled fragments of Blake's earlier claims, stitched together to create the illusion of new evidence. The online reaction has been split between those who are shocked and ready to believe the worst, and those who see the timing and content as far too convenient to take seriously. What makes the entire situation more chaotic is that this case has already been unfolding like a messy, unscripted reality show. For months, both Blake and Justin have been locked in a bitter legal and public relations battle, each side desperately trying to control the narrative. The sudden appearance of these alleged HR memos has now thrown gasoline onto an already raging fire. Social media platforms are flooded with speculation, gossip channels are dissecting every line of the leaked document, and conspiracy theories about who leaked it and why are spreading like wildfire. Critics are asking the obvious. If the allegations were genuine, why did they surface only now? Why were they absent from the initial filings, which were supposed to represent the strongest case Blake could present? And most importantly, why is the company at the center of the supposed scandal outright denying that the documents even exist? These unanswered questions make the story reek of suspicion. Not in a let's wait and see way, but in a way that suggests manipulation, fabrication, and a carefully planned smear tactic. Those who have followed the case closely emphasize that they've read every word of every complaint and every lawsuit, and this material was never included. That fact alone undermines the credibility of the leak. Instead, what we're witnessing may be less about uncovering the truth and more about manufacturing drama. For Blake Lively, this could be a last-ditch gamble to reclaim control of a narrative that has slipped out of her hands. For Justin Baldoni, it's yet another scandalous headline tied to his name, one that could damage his reputation whether the claims are true or not. In the end, the only thing these memos may have truly accomplished is escalating a legal fight that already looked more like a high-stakes soap opera than a courtroom battle. Sony has remained consistent since the very beginning. Back in August 2024, when the first whispers of on-set drama began to circulate, Variety reached out to the studio to verify whether any HR complaints had ever been filed against Justin Baldoni. Sony's answer at the time was a clear and definitive no. There were no reports, no internal filings, no official record of wrongdoing. That was their stance then, and it remains their stance now. Fast forward several months, and suddenly a mysterious document appears online claiming to be an HR complaint targeting Baldoni. The timing is suspicious, but what's even more striking is that Sony hasn't budged an inch. The studio has doubled down, reaffirming that no such complaint exists. That consistency matters. If Sony were lying, they would be opening themselves up to a massive legal disaster, one that could expose them to liability for covering up workplace harassment. No major Hollywood studio would gamble its reputation and billions of dollars on such a reckless lie. The fact that Sony continues to stand firm is, in itself, the biggest red flag pointing to fabrication. The timing makes the situation even murkier. The leak landed just as Baldoni launched a $400 million counter-lawsuit, a move that dramatically shifted the balance of the case. Up until that point, Blake Lively had managed to play the victim, portrayed herself as a courageous whistleblower. But once Baldoni's legal team, led by the sharp and aggressive Brian Fredman, unveiled texts, emails, and hard evidence disproving her claims, the narrative began to collapse around her. Suddenly, the court of public opinion was no longer in her favor. For the first time, the tide was turning. It's against that backdrop that these HR complaints magically appeared. Analysts have pointed out that this may not be coincidence at all, but strategy, a desperate last-minute scandal designed to shift focus and cast new doubt on Baldoni's character. The flaws in the leaked document make that conclusion hard to ignore. For one, the date of the alleged complaint is blacked out, something that makes no sense for an authentic HR filing. Key details are vague or missing, yet somehow the language makes it easy to deduce which actresses are supposedly involved. And the biggest inconsistency of all, if such serious claims existed, why weren't they included in Blake's original lawsuit months ago? The possibility that these aren't real HR filings, but fabricated documents crafted specifically for the media is growing stronger. Think about it. If Blake's team knew they were losing ground in court, planting a damning narrative online could sway public opinion before the trial even begins. It wouldn't be the first time her camp weaponized the media. Early in the saga, Blake went directly to the New York Times with her allegations, giving Baldoni only 12 hours to respond before a damaging article went live. By the time he scrambled to reply, the reputational damage was already done. Releasing a suspicious HR memo now, just days before a critical legal deadline, fits that same pattern of calculated media warfare. The stakes for Blake could not be higher. If this lawsuit falls apart, she isn't just facing financial disaster. Her credibility in Hollywood could be permanently destroyed. She's already been accused of inconsistencies, and if these leaked HR complaints are proven to be fabricated, her remaining public trust could evaporate overnight. For someone once celebrated as America's sweetheart, that kind of collapse would be catastrophic. On the other side, Baldoni is finally turning the tables. His filings are packed with receipts, emails, messages, and documentation that directly contradict Blake's claims. If he continues dismantling her case with evidence this strong, her legal position becomes increasingly untenable. That leaves her with little choice but to escalate the drama outside of court. By introducing sensational new accusation through a leak, she can try to claw back some control of the narrative, adding embellishments to an already shaky story. But here's the harsh reality. The more these desperate tactics are exposed, the weaker her case appears. Every unexplained blackout in the documents, every suspicious timing of media leak, every contradiction between her filings and the supposed evidence chips away at her credibility. If the HR complaint truly never existed, then this isn't just a courtroom battle anymore. It's a smear campaign. And in the long run, smear campaigns rarely hold up under the weight of facts. Blake Lively knows she has everything to lose, and that's why she's fighting with every tool she has left, even if it means burning bridges in Hollywood. But if these memos are indeed fake, she may not just lose a lawsuit. She may lose her standing in the industry forever. At first glance, the so-called HR complaint sounds shocking. The alleged exchange describes Justin Baldoni being told, in a blunt and dismissive tone, that it didn't matter what his relationship with his spouse was like. He simply did not have permission to touch another actress. On the surface, it's a dramatic and damaging claim. But taking a step back, the details start to look highly questionable, and the story deserves much closer scrutiny. For starters, Sony has already gone on record multiple times denying the existence of any HR complaints against Baldoni. If this incident were so severe that Jenny Slate or anyone else felt compelled to escalate it immediately, why is there no official record at all? This isn't speculation. Variety asked Sony directly on December 31st, 2024, whether any HR filings have been made during the production of It Ends With Us. Their response was simple and firm. No. And that answer has not changed. For a studio like Sony, to lie about such a matter would be reckless and legally disastrous. If complaints had truly been filed, they would have had every reason to acknowledge them, because covering up workplace harassment could trigger lawsuits, investigations, and massive liability. The fact that Sony continues to deny the existence of any complaints is, by itself, a glaring red flag. Even the evidence presented to support the claim feels off. According to the alleged text messages, the complaint agent sent a message just 18 minutes after the supposed incident, writing, "Justin just literally grabbed my butt in front of the cameras. I want to talk to someone at Sony." On the surface, that sounds incriminating, but when you examine the phrasing, it feels almost too polished, too neat to be an unfiltered, in-the-moment reaction. Real messages written in anger, panic, or shock tend to be messy, fragmented, and emotional. This one reads like something carefully crafted for a screenshot, ready to be dropped into a lawsuit at the right time. The oddly specific phrase in front of the cameras feels calculated, as though inserted not for authenticity, but for legal impact. And that's not the only inconsistency.
Yeah, it was great just watching them, and then, Blake choreographing and working with them and everybody. It was just,
Blake truly felt uncomfortable. Why didn't she distance herself earlier? Why not raise concerns privately or hint at them before the lawsuit ever materialized? More importantly, why, after filming Wrapped, did she go out of her way to praise Baldoni? Publicly and in private emails, Slate thanked him for creating what she described as a supportive, collaborative, and positive environment on set. Those words directly contradict the claims she is now associated with. If she truly felt violated, why would she celebrate his leadership and professionalism after production ended? That contradiction is perhaps the most damning piece of all. It suggests either that the alleged complaint was manufactured after the fact, or that someone is attempting to weaponize her name without reconciling it with her past statements. Either way, it doesn't add up. Even Baldoni's critics admit that the situation doesn't seem consistent with his behavior or Slate's previous remarks. If this had really happened, and if it had been caught on camera, as the supposed complaint suggests, why has no one addressed it directly? Why has Baldoni's team not been forced to scramble with damage control? Why has Sony not shifted its stance to protect itself? Instead, the silence from official channels and the contradictions in the narrative make this look less like evidence and more like strategy. One more desperate play in a legal and media war that's been filled with last-minute plot twists. In the end, what stands out most is the manufactured feel of the evidence. From the oddly scripted text message to the total lack of corroboration, the entire story seems staged for maximum shock value rather than truth. And when stacked against Slate's own glowing remarks about Baldoni after the film Wrapped, the story collapses under its own weight. If she truly felt unsafe or disrespected, why leave a paper trail of gratitude? Why present him as someone who created a positive environment, only to later accuse him of misconduct? That's why, for many observers, this complaint isn't just unbelievable, it's nearly impossible to take seriously. It reads not like an authentic grievance, but like a carefully crafted weapon, introduced at the exact moment Blake Lively's case was losing steam. The inconsistencies speak louder than the accusations, leaving the impression that this so-called HR complaint is less about justice and more about strategy. You're going to have to own this, because if it turns out these allegations are fabricated, then lying about them will be far more damaging than the claims themselves. That's why it's crucial to see the so-called proof. If these complaints are real, if the accusations are genuine, then where's the evidence? Where are the official records, the documents, or the testimonies from those involved? Without them, it becomes impossible to separate fact from rumor, and that's a problem not just for Baldoni, but for everyone involved. And just when the scandal seems like it couldn't spiral any further, another bombshell is dropped into the mix. The complaint goes as far as to allege that Baldoni admitted to struggling with a pornography addiction and even described non-consensual encounters that supposedly took place inside Blake Lively's personal vehicle. Allegedly, this shocking conversation was captured on a dash cam video, which, if true, would instantly end his career and destroy his credibility. But here's the glaring issue. No such footage has ever surfaced. According to the complaint, Baldoni was overheard speaking inappropriately during a car ride with Blake and their drivers. The implication is that every word was caught on video. Blake herself insists that the dash cam captured the conversation in full. If that's the case, then where is it? Why hasn't this so-called smoking gun been released? In legal terms, this isn't just another piece of evidence. It would be the single most damning proof in the entire case. If an actual recording existed of Baldoni making such admissions, the lawsuit would already be over. There would be no need for speculation, no need for drawn-out legal battles. And yet, what do we have? Vague claims, secondhand retellings, and nothing concrete. The absence of evidence is, in itself, suspicious. If Blake truly possessed a video this explosive, why hasn't she revealed it already? Why not bring it forward and silence the debate once and for all? Instead, the case drags on with accusations but no substance. At best, this looks like a desperate attempt to gain leverage. At worst, it risks exposing the entire complaint as an elaborate fabrication. Maybe Blake is holding back, waiting for the right moment to strike, and release it as a final knockout blow. Or maybe there's no footage at all, and the promise of its existence is nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Even Hollywood gossip king Perez Hilton, no stranger to scandal, has